our first speaker, Rekha Menon. She is professor at Berkeley University and great dancer of classical Indian dance, and she was in Lithuania some years ago and showed us a beautiful show of Indian dancing culture. So it's really amazing experience, and thanks Rekha for that. So Rekha, please.
Oh. Thank you, Gilvin. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for all the organizers. Can you hear me really well, Gilvin?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I was looking, I'm not very familiar with Corleone's artwork. I hope I pronounced it correct.
Yes.
Okay, so I was looking at his work, and then I also, being an art historian, I realized how, and hearing his compositions, that's why the title, Hearing Colors and Seeing Sound. So my paper talks about, I was thinking about very familiar other artists like Kandinsky or Paul Klee, who has worked on both music and art. So that's how I started looking at his work, and so the title. And thank you so much, Gilvinas, for the introduction. I really appreciate it. So the title, Hearing Colors and Seeing Sound. Corleone's sonatic paintings reflect an imagination of vibrant, visceral coloring, which one can hear. It explores a story of historical expression, which one can empathize with. The dynamic application creates a rhythmic sound, which one can see when the eye travels into the painting, reading it from the foreground to the background. The paper will discuss this synesthesia, the sensory phenomena that Corleone creates in the picture space. The sounds drift dancing through the colored forms and lines of his paintings. The painterly works of the artist is transformed beautifully into a language of sounds, overflowing with passion, showing the endless love Corleone had for musicality in his artworks. There is a close link between Corleone's music and his art. His synesthesia enabled him to see sound in colors and images. He imagined the whole world as a great symphony. His paintings often have musical titles like Prelude, Cicero, Andante, Allegro, and Finale. Applying the principles of musical composition to painting, the artist created 7 sonata cycles. Although other artists at the time also explored the idea of fusion of music and art, trying to paint music, Corleone was more interested in the structure of painting, reflecting the structure of musical compositions. He painted repetitions of motives. His lines followed a melodic rhythm, creating harmonies with colors. Occurring in approximately 2 to 4% of the global population, synesthesia is a neurological condition in which one of the 5 senses becomes cross-wired with another. While there are various forms of synesthesia, the most common is the grammophonocolor synesthesia, which causes an individual to see letters and numbers in the form of colors. Other synesthetics can feel sound, auditory, tactile synesthesia, taste, words, lexical gustatory synesthesia, or feel what they see. Mirror touch synesthesia or chromathesia, the type of sound to color synesthesia like Kandinsky possibly had, would have allowed Corleone to hear his paintings with each color and shape, hearing an intrinsic sound, volume, and tone. The sound of colors must have been very powerful to Corleone To the artist, looking at his works, it shows that music played an important role in his art, maybe even in a spiritual context. I'm familiar with Kandinsky's work, and looking at Corleone's work, I feel a similar context of what Kandinsky had written concerning the spiritual in art. He states that color directly influences the soul. Color is the keyboard. The eyes are the hammers. The soul is the piano with many strings. The artist is the hand that plays, touching one key or another purposively to cause vibrations in the soul. The precise mechanism behind synesthesia remains a mystery, but neuroscientists believe that the phenomenon is due to crosstalk between neighboring areas of the brain that govern those senses. What I think is happening at the brain level is porous borders between brain areas, said neuroscientist David Eagleman, a PhD in leading researcher in synesthesia, who developed the gold standard synesthesia assessment tool, which has verified approximately 65,000 synesthetists since his inception in 2007. These two brain areas, which are normally kept separate in people, have information that's leaking across the border. Corleone's has a similar form of synesthesia to what Kandinsky described in his writings. To him, music is not just a series of notes. The oral stimulus of music produces an involuntary cinematic visual experience, bursting with vibrant colors, dynamic movement. I feel with this type of synesthesia works for Corleone's, it is really intense, automatic visual experience. There are colors, patterns, and textures that are dynamic, especially comparing to his music. They are changing and shifting in dynamic patterns. While the study has yet to yield definitive answers about the genetic drives of synesthesia, Eagleman said one thing is for certain. Synesthesia is not a disease or a disorder, but rather an alternative perceptual reality. From the beginning, the study unlocked a very different kind of approach, just really appreciating that people's internal realities and the way they experience the world can be quite different from one another. Eagleman said there is a lot of beauty and understanding that what's going on inside synesthetists is different from other people. Corleone's works portray living and on the verge of millennia, 19th, 20th centuries. He witnessed not only the changes of styles like symbolism, impressionism, first attempts of abstractionism, but also numerous inventions, photos, cameras, cinemas, airplanes. They say with the possibility for the world to change so easily, he developed wonder and fascination with everything he could get his mind on. He researched religious myths, numismatics, astrology, astronomy, aesthetics, history, and read the newest issues of magazines he could get his hands on. So no wonder when you look at his paintings, Corleone's, you see a mixture of interests and styles. Some even argue that Corleone's use of delicate lines and synthesized forms to capture the essence let some of his artworks sit between symbolism, which shows spiritual reality, and abstractionism, stripping to the essence, creating a new art language. Corleone's developed his own symbolic style, drawing on Lithuanian sagas, myths, fairy tales, and folk beliefs, as well as non-Western cultures, ranging from ancient Egyptian, Indian, to Asian. Using the drawing as a basis, Corleone's made many tempera paintings in which secrets are evoked and the earthly world is connected to the supernatural. Instead of reality as we know, he depicted a different world with his work. This depiction of unprecedented images and worlds is a common thread through his work. He was never concerned with abstractions, but with the mentally imaginable. I will show you some examples of his work to show how he captures the sound in color, where one can note the musicality, the synesthesia, the colors, patterns flow with the vibrance of sound. So for some examples, I'm going to share the screen, and I hope, let me know if you can, see it. So just give me a minute. I'm going to try and share the screen.
Okay. Is it allowed?
I'm trying.
Yes.
Just give me a minute.
Yes. We see your screen.
Yeah. Can you see it?
Great. We see everything. Nice.
Okay. Is that good?
Great.
Okay. So let's see. We'll try and get this small. Okay. That way I can. Oops. Something happened. I cannot change. Oh.
Okay.
No. Hold on. It looks as if it's frozen. Okay, there we go.
Now it works, yes.
Yeah. So this is an example which it's called the Allegro painting from Sonata number 6. I'm gonna just use this. The Sonata of the Stars, 1908. In this, literally, if you look at his work here, while same as in a musical form, this painting presents, it's not a sequence of expositions or development or recapitulation as it does in a musical cycle, but definitely you can see that he envisions the universe as a magnificent polyphonic symphony of intertwining cosmic mists, stars, and sunlight. The waves of this ocean of space, the melodies, they weave past each other, forming a rich, ornamented, and a splendid web pierced by the path of the Milky Way. The movement in outer space is not chaotic, but rhythmical and harmonious. The symbol of the order and harmony of the universe is envisioned as the bright figure of an angel standing on a tapering tower of light, as you can see here on the top. I think the whole painting is like awash with color, with colored nebulae, stars, planets swirling and mixing. From bottom to top, an acute colored tower, also covered with nebulae and stars. And you can see there's a lot happening in the picture space. If you look at the painting deeper, and if you start reading and studying the work, I think one can uncover layers of different meanings. So it's very interesting to think that Corleones was so, while painting, I'm imagining he had this fantasy idea that came up and that he literally sublimated onto the canvas. So that's why, especially this particular painting, with this sonata, has this multi-layered meanings that can emerge from this one single picture space. And especially if you look deeper, the yellowish angle with the glowing wings and the rising sun behind it. And behind this is a black trail of stars, and just above the black path is a skywalk supported by 4 yellowish poles, as you can see here in these 4. And you can see the angel on top. So this whole thing, that there's so much happening in this picture space. On the left side of this walkway, a figure kneels with his hands raised in supplication. the facing the angel to the right of the angel is a hooded figure. So there is, as you keep reading, every time I see the painting, I feel there's something new that emerges from his work. And similarly, he has done a lot of work in that short period of time. I think he has produced so many artworks, and though he started painting at a much later time, I think it is such an immense work that one can read into. Now this is another interesting work which I'm going to look at the title so that you can see it. This is the Angel Prelude, and it's interesting again to see the vibrant colors in this work. Gilvin, am I still sharing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure. And so here also you can notice the vibrant colors, the colorful layout, the bright colors, which camouflage with the light at the back, so that he also juxtaposes contrasting colors to really, emerge the different layers from his work. And that's why when you look at his work, they feel, as it's so visceral, that one feels that there is sound, that you can hear the colors and see the sound. And that's why I came up with that title. Now if you go ahead, I also noticed some of the sketches that he did. This one is called the Sketches of the Sonata 4. And in this sketch, you can actually look at, which he did in 1908. Most of his works are from 1908 to 1912. And even though it's a simple sketch, it's a very interesting layout of what his imagination is going to be in the final outcome. And even in the sketch, you can see multiple forms and figurations which emerge onto the paper. And you can see how he has even shown what can happen to the painting. Like you can see the pyramidal structures, you can see the darkened light shades that his imaginations are coming out. And there's multiple happenings on the top layer of this picture space. Another work which was very interesting to me, which is called the Andante, the second part of the sonata. And it is just as solemn and monumental, but much more restrained, with a few bands of cosmic mist and a spherical mass of still planet, perhaps Earth itself, and an angel steps out. So if you look at this painting in comparison to the others, this was a much more calmer and a still, painting with not much happening, but the forms are much clearer and much, the imagination is not as crowded or as fantastical as the other images. So here, there is a calmness. Maybe it is also in relation to the musicality of the picture or the composition that he was thinking. So it's not as many repetitions or as many, fantasy images coming out on this image. And this was also another interesting sketch, which again you can see very simple, minimal lines, but it tells so much of what is going to happen. And in those minimal lines, I think that the lines really give a momentum, a movement, to just like what you see in music. And that's what I felt when I looked at this sketch. All these lines which go triggering around the picture space, it draws itself to this musicality that he is imagining. And I thought that was such a beautiful rendering that he has done. So going ahead with some of his other examples, here is another of his great works, which again, part of the pyramidal sonatas that he has done. It's pretty stark, but again, there is a combination of that. The simple coloration, you can see the different, repetitions of the forms that he is doing. Going down also, this particular work also I thought was very interesting in terms of the within one, monochrome palette. As an artist, I look at it as a monochrome palette. But within that monochrome palette, you can see so many different forms emerging. It's like an overall, yellowish, ochreish picture space. But within that picture space, here is like the imagination of the sun and the pyramidal aspect of the sun's rays, which is literally emerging out of that one color, and also all the lighter forms in the picture space kind of give it so much depth, and as you keep reading the painting, you feel as if another form emerges from that picture space. And here are some of his other, let me look at the title. This is the Sonata 7, which is, again, an interesting form with the pyramids. So he's done a series of his pyramids between 1909 and 1911, and I think they all have a similar contrasting aspect of the light and shade, the dark and light, and how as if the light is coming out of the darkness in his paintings. And I think that is what really captures the visceral colors and the sounds, and that's why one can really say we hear the colors because of the contrasting depth that he creates in his work. In this one, I took some of his other works, which was really interesting to me, especially as a prelude to the sonata paintings. So here is another very rich in symbolism. It has a poetic quality, I thought, this work. It is very much, he was inspired by the Lithuanian landscapes, the mythology, the folklore that he saw around, that he has read. And it has these natural images. He did many of them with mountains, grass snakes, birds, and which often appear in a very, I want to say, in a very abstract form, or almost as a human or an animal abstract form. Excuse me. And he also, quite often in this phase, he did many paintings which showed the dichotomies of light and darkness, morning and evening, or life and death, or vertical and horizontal. He played around with those notions in his work. Excuse me. Leading to those, in the 1905, 1906, he did a whole series which showed a deep interest, a relationship between man and the universe. And he created this whole series of 13 paintings called Creation of the World. And in this, you can see a much more abstract form in his paintings. Excuse me. His work, when I say much more abstract, I also think when I look at the time frame, his work literally precedes more of Kandinsky's work. Excuse me. I have a bad cough, so please excuse me.
It's okay, take your time. Maybe a little water.
Yeah, I'm fine, yeah. So, in his work, which I found a little more abstract, and it was very interesting for me as an art historian to notice that he did these works in 1905, 1906, whereas, Kandinsky's work was so much later. So it's so interesting to see that there is a Lithuanian artist, or Polish, I want to say either, because it was one country, right? And he had this works, these abstract works, way before Kandinsky did. But still, in art history, we learn Kandinsky as the father of modern abstraction. And I think Leonis should get the title of, the father of being the abstract art, because his work definitely is way, way earlier than when Kandinsky did abstract art. So it was interesting for me to study that, especially with these works, with the creation of the world. As you can see here, there is a much more, there is definitely a non-representation and abstraction that you can see, which was very interesting for me. So also this one, where you can look at his work again, in this work, I was reading of something of an Estonian art critic who also mentions that the Coriolis is the first abstract painter, and yet few knew it. Kandinsky only painted his first abstract work in 1911, but already in 1904, Coriolis gave his world a body of work that we must class as abstract or semi-abstract painting. And I think that is so true when you look at these works, like especially the creation series which he did, like this one, or for matter, this one. And again, with the beautiful, vibrant colors that you can see, there is definitely a semi-abstract or an abstract nature in his work. So also this work, which is like a dream landscape, which reflects Coriolis' interest in Eastern philosophy and theosophy. They say he was also interested in those, and he's a well-read person. I also was reading that he has written some works, but I didn't get a chance to read his excerpts. But very interesting, we can see how a well-read, musical, and a creative artist he was. And in these paintings, you can definitely note those aspects. Especially this one, also thinking of the idea of abstraction. You can see there is an underlying layers of forms, but overall, the non-representation is so obvious in these works. And I was fascinated by some of these simple drawings, which he calls Winter, and this other one, which he calls My Road. I like these for the simplicity and also for the minimal nature of colors. And I think from all his work, these two were my favorite paintings. These two were my favorite works that I really loved of his whole series. Just because it's so simple, minimal, but also giving the stark reality of what he's trying to portray. And I thought that was such a beautiful explanation in such a minimal nature. Same thing with this. The beautiful, simple lines. At the same time, those lines have such momentum, such movement, and such rhythm that I feel it's such a great work. So these two are my favorite from the whole collection, so I really wanted to include it. And so in terms of just looking at these were just the examples that I chose. And I think overall you can see what I was trying to say, that his colors really do sound, that you can hear his colors and you can see the sound in his works. In conclusion, I do, let me stop sharing right now. I will come back. So I just want to, I hope those examples, I'm sure many of you are very familiar with this work, but what I saw in his work is something I wanted to talk about. And I do want to say, looking at his painterly style and his work and the vast expanse of his work and his contribution, I do want to say Coriolis is an important figure and we should all study him in our art history courses and know about him, which is kind of sad that he is pushed back and we haven't heard or have studied him. And I'm so happy to be part of this conference to even look at his work and have a deeper look and a deeper study at Coriolis' artwork. I should say he is an important figure in Lithuanian culture and if you look at the national consciousness and how he has portrayed them in his work. Not only his work steeped in Lithuanian mythology and folklore, the artist who declared his intention to dedicate to Lithuania all of his past and future work, who was actively involved in the Lithuanian national movement and cultural life. I think he should be. I'm really glad that this whole series of works are being studied and talked about because of that. And to know that he was so actively involved in the national movement and cultural life of Lithuania. And also to see that today Many of his works are being exhibited all around the country, and it's kind of nice to see that. And the first 3 exhibitions, not only in Lithuania but in other places. And so I thank the organizers to give me a chance to really study and look at his work, because for me it was the first time that I was studying Corleone's artwork. In conclusion, in the Indian context, I want to explain the nature or concept of Maya, just because I thought about it when I was looking at his work. We believe that Maya, in the Indian philosophical context, is real and unreal. The reasoning is our perception of reality keeps changing. As we acquire knowledge and experience, we keep removing the veils of ignorance, or keep removing the veils of Maya. Corleone's artworks, I believe, can be read just like uncovering the Maya. When we keep reading and studying his artworks, a deeper meaning emerges. Every time you read, every time you see his work, a deeper meaning emerges, like removing the layer of Maya. It's like your perception of reality keeps changing as we acquire and experience his artworks. Each time the artwork uncovers another layer. And so with that, I conclude, because every time I look at it, I'm sure I have another deeper interpretation to his work. So thank you so much. Thank you, Gilvinus. Thank you, Algis, for giving me this
Interesting presentation. And I'll start from a question regarding synesthesia. I am curious if we have this effect of merging chromatic and audio feelings, and this kind of ecstatic elevation. What we can expect from dance, because what I saw when you were dancing, you are merging movements and rhythm and colors with different dressing and facial expressions, and I feel kind of all universes dancing in front of me. So that should be even more ecstatically high, and should be more ecstatically intensive. Or am I right? Or
No, it is true. I mean, the idea of when you're dancing, especially with Indian dance, we describe to such an extent that we try to facially and body language, we try to describe and narrate to show you that synesthetic idea, which is true. I agree to that. I mean, definitely, but especially with Indian dance, because our facial expressions are very important to our dance, and it depends on the person. It is pretty subjective. So yes, that's what they're saying, that some of them can really visualize more than another person. Synesthesia, as they say, is in some people, according to the research of this great doctor, who says that some can really, when they hear a sound or see like a dance performance, they actually start seeing colors. For them it is much stronger than an ordinary person. And the reason they say that it happens is because the border how should I say, the neighboring senses in the brain are linking to each other. And so it's merging. And that's what the researcher, the doctor says. And it might be true. I mean, I'm not a doctor, a scientist, but it's very interesting to note that it is true, because there are folks who actually when they hear the sound, they see the color more than the sound. So like Kandinsky writes in his book that, like a church bell for him, when the church bell rings, it's always what he sees is orange. And I think I can agree to that because it's so fluorescent, so loud. And when you think about it in that way, yes, I can see that orange, so it's very interesting to hear that how they say it happens more to some people because of the leak between the brain portions. That is what, so yes, dance can also be synesthetic.
Great.
Very true.
We have more questions. Alice?
Hi, Rekha.
Hi.
Okay, here I am. One question, or maybe more. Forget the brain. The question is this. Throughout Chironis's works, there are dimensions of expressivity, moods.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you show them? In what way are they visible and audible? The mood spaces. Expressivity, because you mentioned expressivity face, but when you dance, it's not only face. The gestures are expressive.
That is true. I think he expresses it through the colors, the moods and the vibrations which he shows, at least from what I have seen. I'm not an expert on Corleone's artwork. I've seen only so much, I have to say. And I haven't read much of his work. And of course, musically, I am not, I've only heard experts of his compositions, but I haven't really studied them. But I do want to say his works, just aesthetically viewing them, especially with the idea of how he uses the dark and light in his paintings, I think you can definitely see the dimensions of expression. Even though they are so multi-layered, especially his, the Sonata 6, I think that painting really stands out because there are so many forms, like one behind the other, and I think that creates so many expressive dimensions. And because of the forms are so multi-layered, and because of the different colors he uses, I think it does become expressive. So for me, aesthetically looking at his work, I would say it's the contrasting colors that he uses. Even though there's so much happening, I think he creates those different phases of expressions. That's aesthetically looking, that's all I can say. And if you look at his different time frames of his work, yes, some of his work becomes still much calmer, but I think even in those calmer works, like the last two works which I like the most, which is very minimalistic, but even within that small minimalistic picture space, I think the way he uses that simple, thin, black line in those paintings, just falling rhythmically down, I think creates the expression, creates a movement, creates a language in the painting. I hope I've given you an answer, Algis.
Dear Rekha, thank you so much. I am so fascinated by your insights and conclusions. And I wanted to ask, is it the art at its highest level something which gives us possibility to have a more conscious understanding about being, about universe? It's what I mean, what I really liked what you say about unveiling or conveying of this Maya layers. Actually, what I always do during these 4 years now, I always see in Chulon's paintings many layers. And we are like those childs actually who are like going each time one and another layer, like opening layers. But I never heard that some of our colleagues would call it like conveying Maya. That's what I really like, and I really feel that it's true. So I just wanted to share. I'm really happy if you want to add something to this more, so would be happy to hear. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I really wanted to say, I thought about that because I'm very fascinated with this concept or nature of Maya. And in Indian philosophy, we always say that, reality keeps constantly changing. And it keeps changing because of how we perceive it. And our perception of this reality changes because every time we are acquiring knowledge, every time we are experiencing new things. And so the reality is not constant. So when I look at Kirlona's work, that's what I felt, because there's so many layers. I only started studying his work just before this conference, to be frank. I never knew the artist really well. So for me, it was like that. Every time I looked at it, when Algis and Gilvinas told me about the conference, and I looked at his work, sent the abstract, and then when I came back, I was traveling to Mexico, and I came back and I started looking at his work again. I felt there's so many more layers, and each time I look at it, it's like something which I haven't seen before. So it was just like, how the veils of Maya was being removed. And so the perception of that painting kept changing constantly. And that's what I felt when I looked at his work, because it kept uncovering something new, something different, something more visceral every time I saw the work. And I thought, that's why I kind of compared it, because for me, that's how I was looking at his work. And it's very true, I love this concept of Maya, because I think it is so true that our perception of reality keeps changing, because it's never a constant. We grow, we evolve, and each time you look at something, each time you're looking at it with deeper meaning. And I'm sure I go back to his paintings again, and if you ask me to talk about his paintings much later, I'm sure I'll uncover some more reality. And I feel that is how I would read his work. And I love that idea, of this, how the veils of Maya are removed. And that's why I felt, because there's so much happening in his work. There's multi-layers. It's not a simple abstract. There's a lot of things happening in that abstract work. So thank you for your comment. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate that you understood what I was trying to say. Thank you so much for that.
Nice. And do we have more questions? Thank you, Rekha. It was